When you're playing Pathfinder and you come across a creature or an object, you generally want to hit it or you'd like to be able to see it. So, for that to happen, it needs to be detected. My name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and talk about that. There are three states of detection that a creature or an object can be in that measure the degree to which you can actually sense it. And that would be observed, hidden, and undetected. Now, there is also kind of a fourth one that is almost a null state in that it would be unnoticed, meaning you don't even know something is there, as well as there are some conditions that can modify this, such as being concealed or invisible. All of these conditions are relative to the person who is doing the observing. By that, I mean that you, the player character, or the creature who is trying to observe you, these states are relative to them. It is a pretty fluid thing, and in general, it is the GM who is going to keep track of all these various states of detection between all the different parties involved in any particular encounter. And one thing that these will all have in common, specifically when talking about being related to a creature or a player character, is they affect on how you can try to target that particular creature, or for them, the player character. There are certain stealth and deception things that you can do to modify this, such as avoiding notice, hiding, or sneak when you're using the stealth skill, as well as using your deception to create a diversion in order to try to change their focus, or possibly a precursor to using a stealth skill. Other things that could possibly change the detection status could be things like invisibility, or a creature or a player character moving through a door or moving around a bend in a corridor. So now that we've kind of defined a little bit on what these general states of detection are, let's go ahead and take a look at them. But let's start with the least to the highest level of detection. So we're going to go ahead and start with unnoticed. So now we're going to talk about unnoticed. Unnoticed means that the observer has no idea if another creature or a thing is present at all. There are some skills that require the particular creature to be detected in some form or another, so unnoticed would kind of disqualify those actions from being able to take place. And there are things that you can do only while being unnoticed with stealth actions specifically. Now, to kind of illustrate what unnoticed might be in a real situation, you could think of trying to sneak into a castle keep, and you've snuck in and you're trying to get on top of the wall so you can view the surrounding area. You climb the steps and you look out and you see two guards that are standing on the keep wall. However, they have their backs to you and they're looking out because they aren't expecting anything coming from inside. The wind's blowing and it's howling, so they can't hear you approach, as well as since the wind is blowing in their face, they can't smell you. At that point, you can observe them, but they have no idea that you even exist. So in that particular case, they can't perform any actions on you simply because they don't even know that you're there, and you have full use of any stealth actions that you could possibly do, or actions that require them to not notice you. This would be your time to use those particular actions. Now let's go ahead and move on to the three actual states of detection, and we're going to go ahead and start with undetected. So now let's talk about the first one that I would like to discuss, which is undetected. In undetected, you are probably aware of the creature or the object, but you do not know what space it occupies. You might have a general idea as to where it could be, or you might not have a general idea at all. You just know that it is present. But because you don't know exactly where this thing is, if it were to try to attack you or to perform an action on you, you are going to be flat-footed against it, which means you are going to suffer a -2 armor class penalty. So it's definitely something that you kind of don't want. If you are trying to target an undetected creature, it's incredibly difficult. You cannot easily target it with attacks or spells. And in undetected, the GM, before you even try to attack, is going to perform a secret flat check, and that the DC of that particular flat check would be determined upon various things within the situation. But you will not know after you make your attack if you missed because you hit the wrong square or you missed because of the armor class of the particular creature. So what this would mean is if you are trying to attack and you attack this square right here and you miss, well, do you re-roll with your second attack on the same square or do you move over to the next square? It's a decision you're going to have to make, and you will not know which one that is. So in this particular case, you can think of it as you're kind of wildly swinging your sword around, or you're just throwing spells at various areas in order to try to hit something that you're not entirely sure where it is. One thing I will say is area of effect spells will still affect undetected creatures because you are not throwing that spell at a specific creature, you're throwing it at an area. So if the creature happens to be within the area that you threw it at, then it is going to be affected by the spell. So in that case, the penalties or the secret check would not apply. So a good example from the book is about movement. So you might suspect that after a round or two of fighting, that a creature moved to a specific area, a certain distance or direction based on the context of the battle and the context of what rooms you're in and your surroundings. So you might think a creature moved to a doorway that was 15 feet away. But maybe the hallway's pretty wide and there's multiple spaces in front of that doorway. So you approach and you swing at a square. You do not hit. The GM already rolled his flat check. You do not hit, but you are not sure whether it's because it was in that space or not, or whether you missed because of armor class. You take a gamble and think it's because of the space. So you move one space over, you roll your attack roll, but you had passed that secret GM flat check. So you are able to hit that particular creature. So in that case, it works out for you. However, the creature might not have been in that second space. It might still have been the first one and you just missed. That's the problem with undetected, is you just don't know. So now that we've kind of clarified what undetected is, let's go ahead and move on to hidden. Hidden is a little bit better than undetected, but there still are some limitations in it. So what hidden specifically means is you know what space a hidden creature occupies, but little else. So in other words, you very much know that he is in this particular square, but you don't know where he's facing. You don't know exactly where he is, especially depending on the size of the creature. It could be harder to hit or less, but in general, it is going to be a DC11 flat check to even see if you can hit that particular creature. So perhaps in this particular case, the creature moved behind cover or successfully used a hide action where you can see some movement in the square, but you don't know exactly where in the square it is. Blinded would also affect this, or if the creature is invisible and you know they haven't moved, they would be considered hidden to you. One thing you can do in order to alleviate this condition is to use the seek basic action, but of course that is going to take one of your actions up. So regardless of what you do, however, you are going to be flat-footed to this hidden creature, so you're going to suffer that -2 AC. Now, relating to that DC11 flat check, if you fail that DC11 flat check, you still used your action or used whatever components or bolts or anything along those lines. By bolts, I mean crossbow bolts or sling stones. You will still use up whatever particular material components for spells, consumables, anything you did with any particular action you did, you just fail. And regardless of whether you successfully target the creature or not, targeting and hitting the creature does not remove the hidden status. So you are still going to be flat-footed to that particular creature regardless of what happens. So hopefully that cleared up hidden a little bit. Let's move on to the most normal and the highest level of detection, which is observed. So observed is the most common level of detection. The easiest way I could say this, and probably the most common way you're going to run into it, truthfully, is if you're going through a compound, a dungeon, or series of connecting rooms, clearing out monsters, doing a dungeon crawl of some sort, and you come into a new room. As you come to the new room, you see the creatures, and the creatures see you because no one had actions prepared before the encounter occurred. So in that case, the creature's there simply because you used your precise sense of vision, or if you aren't using vision as your precise sense, whatever your precise sense would be. But the key word kind of in that previous sentence is precise sense. Observed is done by using precise senses, and that's how you would get to the observed condition. When you are in the observed condition, there are no penalties, no drawbacks, unless someone does something like concealed or hidden. And we'll talk about that in a minute here, those conditions that can obscure that a little bit. But one thing I will say is an observed creature can still be considered concealed in certain situations. If a creature is behind a small curtain, or if it's foggy or a fog bank or misty or anything along those lines, if that can be concealed, but understand that there is no physical impediment in order to the attack. So it would only be a DC5 flat check if someone is concealed in an observed state. So by using the concealed condition, there's a slight percentage chance that you will not even be able to attack it. So it's a 25% chance, basically, is what it is with a DC5 flat check. So you will need to roll that DC flat check to determine whether you can even hit that creature to begin with before the attack roll even comes into effect. And then the last thing I would like to talk about here is the hidden condition. The hidden condition applies if you know what space the creature or object is in, but nothing else. And this can be triggered by the hide action. Once again, if you are blinded, or if the creature is invisible, or a magical darkness spell, or it could just be totally dark. And you have had success with the seek action in the darkness spell case. So when something is hidden, regardless of the state it's in, you are flat-footed like it's an undetected, and you must roll that DC11 flat check. And just to state this one more time, a successful target does not remove that flat-footed condition. So you'd have to make the flat check every single time you want to attack. And the best way to kind of sum this up is a successful hit does not give you precision. It only meant that you exceeded that DC11 flat check and you were able to attack and get beyond the armor class. So basically we have those three conditions of detection, or three levels of detection, which would be undetected, hidden, and observed. That kind of one condition that is the absence of detection, which would be unnoticed, means that you don't even know it exists. And then there are things like concealed, invisible, or hidden that can alter these particular states. Also, terrain and movement can work against you in these particular things. But I do hope that this particular explanation helped you out to figure out what all these different conditions means and what they mean to you as a player or GM if you're the one that's playing the actual creatures. Well, I do hope that this video helped clear up something for you, and maybe you learned something, or maybe refresh something in your head about something you thought you knew, but you weren't quite clear of what you needed to do in a particular situation. So if you like this video, I hope you like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whether you do or you don't, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Happy adventuring. Thanks.